Chapter 7. When they are driving up the driveway, Cliff's SUV is parked in front of the house. He is sitting in the kitchen eating when they walked in. Cliff loves food. He can eat 24/7. "Merry Christmas," Cliff said, handing Jensen a large brown envelope. Jensen looks into it. It has a passport, birth certificate, social security card, high school diploma, and driver's license. "That was quick," Christina said, smiling. "I told him I needed it as quickly as possible. I knew Jensen wanted to start classes as soon as he could." Cliff said, "You can register for school today if you want to." She looking at him. "After dinner," Jensen said, smiling. "Linda and Floyd left about 10 minutes ago," Cliff said, eating some turkey and dressing and a huge slice of German chocolate cake. Christy is fixing hers and Jensen's plates. He walks behind her, wraps his arm around her, kisses her on the back of her head. Cliff looks at them and smiles. He didn't say anything. He knew from the way the two of them were acting when they were shopping that they liked each other. Jensen pours 2 glasses of soda. They sit down, joining Cliff. "Well, I'm going to leave you two alone," Cliff said as he put his dishes in the dishwasher. "Tomorrow is Saturday. What time do you two want me here?" "Around 2, I guess. We're going ice skating," Christy said, looking at Jensen, smiling. He smiles back. "See you two then," Cliff said, walking out the door. "Jay, I have something for you," she said as they finish loading dishes in the dishwasher. She takes his hand, walk into the library. He is walking behind her. Christy opens her desk drawer. She opens a brown envelope. "You can use these until I order some with your name on them," she said, handing him an American Express, MasterCard, Discover card, Visa card, and $500. "No, Christy," he said, shaking his head, looking at her. "You don't have any money. I want you to be able to buy things when you want to. I don't want you to go without anything. Also, you will need to buy your books and supplies for school," Christina said, shaking her head. "Okay," Jensen said, nodding his head. "I'm not going to the office until the after 1st of the year. Anything you want to do or go, let me know," she said, looking at him. "Christy, what happens to me if you decide you want to get married and start a family?" Jensen asks, looking at her concerned. "Then I will ask you to marry me. If you say no, then we will live as we do now. If you are okay with it," she said, looking at him. "Wait, you're saying we're going to be together for the rest of our life?" he asks her, looking at her. "That's the plan, unless you want to leave. Do you?" she asks him. "You are giving me a choice?" Jensen asks, surprised. "Yes, I am," Christy said, looking at him. "No, I don't want to leave," he said, smiling, shaking his head. "Good, because I don't want you to leave either," she said, smiling back. "Okay," Jensen said, smiling. "I'm going to take a shower," Christy said as she's standing up. "Can I join you?" Jensen asks. "Yeah. I was hoping you would." "Jay, you never have to ask me that," she said, smiling. Jensen picks her up, throws her over his shoulder, walking upstairs to the bathroom. As soon as they are in the shower, he pins her against the wall, lifts her up. She wraps her arms around his neck and legs around his waist. He put his hand on the wall for support after he pushed his dick inside her, thrusting her harder and harder. The harder he thrusts her, the more she grinds on his dick and moans. Before long they both reach our climax. Christy is drying off when Jensen picks her up. She wraps her legs around him, reaching for his dick, inserting it in her core. They only make it to the floor in their bedroom. He lays her on the floor, her legs still wrapped around him. As he starts pounding her, both moaning, moving their body in sync until they come. "You know, I had planned on wearing my Christmas gift tonight," she said, smiling as they lay on the bedroom floor naked, wrapped in each other's arms. "I can't wait to see you in it. But I prefer you naked," he said, smiling, kissing her forehead. Her cell phone rings. She knew it was Vicky by the ringtone. "Why is Vicky calling me this time of night?" she said, getting up. Jensen was smiling, looking at her naked butt as she walked. Phone conversation. "Hello. Vicky, have you two been watching TV tonight?" Christina: "No, why?" Vicky: "Pictures of you and Jensen are on it. They want to know who the mystery man is." Christina: "What show?" Vicky: "GMZ. They have pictures of the two of you doing your Christmas shopping." Christina: "Be here in the morning. I will tell you what to release." Vicky: "Okay, end of call." Christina sits down on the bed, turns the TV on. "What wrong?" he asks as he sits beside her. "Nothing, we're on TV," she said, pointing to their pictures on the large screen TV that's mounted on the wall. "What do we do now?" Jensen asks, looking at the TV. "We will tell them who you are. That we have been dating for 6 months in a committed relationship. You're in the public eye now. I was never going to hide you. But I was hoping for at least a week that we would have some privacy," she said, looking at him. "Okay," Jensen said, nodding his head, still looking at the TV. "Your mother and stepfather might have seen this. I don't trust either one of them. Don't go anywhere alone. Cliff or one of the other guys goes with you," she said, looking at him. "Do you think they might try something?" he asks, looking at the worried look on her face. "They sold you once, who knows what they are capable of doing." "I can't lose you," Christina said, looking at him with tears running down her face. "Christy, look at me," he said as he cups her face, looking into her eyes. She looks at him. "You're not going to lose me. You are stuck with me," he said, smiling. "Okay," she said, sobbing, nodding her head. Jensen lays her back on the bed, wraps his arms around her. They fell asleep. The next day after breakfast, Christy calls her bodyguards and Cliff to come to the house. She and Jensen met with Vicky in her office, giving her information to release to the press. Vicky reads it. "Sounds good. But what about where he lives?" Vicky said, smiling, looking at the two of them. "You don't need that. You want to know because you are nosy. But Miss Nosy, we live together," Christina said, smiling. "Did you lose your virginity?" Vicky is looking at her and Jensen. "Yeah," Christina said, smiling, looking at Jensen. "You must be one hell of a man. She gave you her virginity. Do you know how many men were after her trying to conquer her?" Vicky said, smiling. "Vicky!" Christina yells. Jensen is laughing, looking at Vicky. "She gets carried away sometimes. You will get used to her," Christy said, looking at him, laughing. "Yeah, Christy, I see she does," Jensen said, laughing, still looking at Vicky. Wait a minute, he calls you Christy. Nobody but your mother can call you that, Vicky said, looking at Christy. But she is pointing at him. Mother and Jensen, nobody else, Christina said, shaking her head. Chris, we are ready, Cliff said, standing in the doorway. We are on our way, she said, looking at him. Happy New Year. See you in the office on the 3rd, right? Vicky said, smiling. Yep. Happy New Year, Christina said as she and Jensen were walking out the door. They walk into a meeting room. Everyone sits at the table. She and Jay sit down looking at Cliff. When Jensen goes out, 2 of us will be with him at all times. Also, we are going to have to double the security around here. The paparazzi are already outside the gate. Hell, one was trying to climb over it, Cliff said, looking around the table. We still want to go ice skating today, Christina said, looking at Cliff. No problem, we'll be there. They will probably be there taking pictures. But no one will get close to you two. You two will be able to enjoy yourself, Cliff said, looking at the other bodyguard. All the men nod their heads, agreeing with Cliff. Seem like you have everything under control, Jensen said, smiling at Cliff. Cliff nods his head. But I need to talk to you two about something, Cliff said, looking at Chris and Jensen. Everyone leaves the 3 alone. Chris wanted me to check into your stepfather and mother. I think you both need to hear this. David is a con man. He looks for women, then takes their money. Some of the women think that he is married to them. But that is still determined. If that is the case, then your mother is his 10th wife. I managed to find their marriage information. Cliff shows Jay a copy of the marriage certificate. Her name is Robbie. She is not my mother. He is reading the certificate. Okay, I meant Robbie. He left her the day after they sold you, with the money. The house is in foreclosure, Cliff said, looking at Jensen. How could that be? That was my father's parents' house. It was paid off years ago. Jensen is looking startled. David probably talked her into taking a loan on it. Christina is touching his hand. Do you want to keep your grandparents' house? We could buy it, she said, looking at Jensen. No, but thanks for asking. Bad memories after my father died. Jensen looks at her. Okay, let me know if you change your mind, Christy said, looking at him. I will. How did she get involved with him? Jensen asks Cliff. I don't know. Do you want me to find out? Cliff asks. No, but I would like for you to find out how my father really died. I would appreciate it, Jensen said. Okay, sure, Cliff is smiling. He is looking at the love bites on Jensen's and Christina's necks. Why are you staring at us? She asks Cliff, looking at him. You two have been pretty busy, Cliff said, laughing, rubbing his neck, looking at them. Not really, Jensen said, looking confused at Christy. Both of your necks say otherwise, Cliff said, smiling. Oh, they both said, smiling in unison. Chapter 9. 1 week later. Chris, I hate talking to you about this before you go to your doctor's appointment today, Vicky said, looking worried. It's okay. What's going on? She said, looking at Vicky. Nelson said they didn't find the right model for the ad. We need to find one soon because you want the cologne on the shelves within 2 weeks. He said he can just pick one. Vicky said. No, he has to be the right one. Not anyone will do, he has to fit. I could ask Jay, Chris said, looking over at Jay and Cliff. He would be perfect. After all, he is who you had in mind when you created the scent. Chris, he's our only hope right now. Vicky said. I know, let's both talk to him, Chris said, looking over at Jensen and Cliff. Let's do this, Vicky said as they both air fist pumps in the air. I saw you two fist pump. Who is your victim? Cliff asks, looking at them as they are walking over to them. Their victim. Jensen asks, looking at Christy and Vicky. Yeah man, whenever you see them do that. That means they are on a mission. Cliff said, looking at him. Jensen, Vicky said, smiling. Why me? He asks, looking at them. Can we talk to you? It's very important. Christy is looking at him. He nods his head, still looking at Christy and Vicky as they sit down at the table. I need your help, Christy said. Sure, anything for you baby, Jensen said, looking at her, smiling. We can't find the right model for the cologne that Chris created, Vicky said. Whoa, baby, I am not a model. He said, looking at Christy. Shaking his head and one of his hands. I know. But I need to have the cologne on the shelves in 2 weeks. It needs to be advertised. She said, Jensen, the cologne is Chris's idea of you. You inspired this scent. She loves the way you smell, so she created this cologne herself. Vicky said, looking at us, smiling him. You did? Jensen asks Christy, smiling. Yes, I did. She is smiling at him. What did you name it? He asks, looking at her. Jensen, Mi Amor, she said, smiling. I have a cologne named after me. He asks, smiling. Yes. She and Vicky said in unison. I'll do it. He said, still smiling. Thank you, you're a lifesaver, Christy said, giving him a peck on the lips. First OBGYN appointment. Jensen, Christy, Cliff, and James are at the doctor's office. A newspaper is sitting on the table. Jensen picks it up, scanning over it. He sees a picture of a young man that looks familiar to him. He remembers seeing him at the auction. The man with the collar bought him. The guy was found dead, he was beaten and his throat was slashed. They are asking for anyone that knows his name to contact the police. That could have been me. If Christy hadn't have saved me. He is saying to himself. Scratching his arm where they put a tracking device in it. What's wrong with your arm? Christy asks, looking at him, pointing at his arm with her head. That damn tracking device itches at times, Jensen said, looking at her. What tracking device? She asks, looking at him, confused. Cliff is looking at him, confused too. They shoot one in my arm that night. Didn't you know? Jensen is looking at her, confused. No, I didn't. So they have been keeping track of you this whole time? Christy asks, looking at him, then at Cliff. Cliff moves closer to Jensen and Christy. We have to get this out of you as soon as possible. They might try to come, to kidnap you, and resell you. Then we will have to kill their ass. I'm not saying that's their plan. But who knows? Cliff said, looking at Jensen's arm. So that night when Christy said I could leave if I wanted to. If I had left, they could have found me and sold me again. Jensen said, looking at Cliff. Yeah, they probably do that a lot, Cliff said, looking at Jensen. I will see if my doctor can take it out. While we're here. She's been my doctor for years. She and my mother grew up together. She's family. Christy said. Ask her if she will remove it. If she does, bring the device to me. I will take it from there. Cliff said. Jensen looks at the picture in the newspaper again. Do you know him? Christy asks. She is looking at the expression on his face. It's not a good one. No, I met him once, but I don't know his name, Jensen said, still looking at the picture. Chris, the nurse said, standing at the door. Christy and Jay walk through the door hand in hand. They are taken to an exam room. What's going on? Karen, the nurse asks, smiling at Christina. I took 5 pregnancy tests. All of them were positive. She said, smiling. Someone knocks on the door and opens it at the same time. At the door. How is my goddaughter doing? Well, it is not the time for your routine checkup. The doctor is looking at Chris, worried. Miss Christina might be pregnant, Karen said, smiling. Ah, I see. The doctor said, looking at Christy and Jensen, smiling. I'm Pat, Chris's doctor, and her godmother. You may call me Aunt Pat or Auntie. She said, smiling at Jensen. Nice to meet you. He said, smiling. Let's get some blood work done and get you checked out, Pat said. Auntie, we need to speak to you in private before we leave, Christy whispers. Okay, Karen, I'll draw her blood, Pat said, looking at Christy. Chris tells Pat everything, even about David, except about her buying Jensen. She said he had been kidnapped a few years ago. They had put a tracker on him. Pat looks at Chris funny. I have known you your whole life. I believe all of it but one part. But you have always been a good girl. You must have your reason for not telling me. I always knew David was a no-good son of a bitch. Pat said while drawing blood from Christy's arm. So I will get Karen to do an X-ray on your wrist. I'll take it out. Pat said as she finishes taking Christy's blood. Go ahead and get undressed. While I get Karen to an X-ray on Jensen's wrist. Pat said, smiling. Jensen looks at Christy. He wanted to be her when she is being examined. I won't do anything to her until you come back, Pat said, smiling. Okay. He said, kissing Christy's forehead. Christy undresses and puts on a gown. She sits on the exam table waiting for him and her aunt to come back. Karen came in first, setting a tray up for Christy's examination. He is right behind me. Jensen walked into the room with his wrist wrapped up. Are you okay? She asks him, holding her hand out to him. Yes, I'm fine. He said, smiling, taking her hand. Pat came back into the room reading her laptop. Well, you two are going to be parents. Let's do an exam. She said, sitting on the stool sliding in front of Christina. Jensen and Christy are still holding hands. It seems you're about 6 weeks. We will see you back in a month. I'm going to send both of your prescriptions over to your pharmacy. It will be in your name, Christy. It's pain meds for him. I'll check your wrist when you two come back. Pat said, looking at Jensen, smiling. Thank you. She and Jensen said in unison. You're both welcome, congratulations, Pat said, walking out of the room. Later that day, Christy and Jensen are eating dinner in the kitchen. Jay, I saw your expression when you were reading the newspaper. What's wrong? She asks. That guy was at the auction, in the room that I was in waiting for you. An older man bought him. He put a collar and a leash on him. The man told him that he was horny. Then lead him out like he was an animal. Jensen said, looking at the table. Christy gets up, walks over to him. Hugs and kisses the top of his head. It's all right, I know you went through a lot. It's okay if you want to cry. It's nothing wrong with a man crying. I'm here for you, she said, still holding him. He wraps his arms around her, lays his head on her stomach. Thank you for giving me a home and a family. I love you, Christy. I love you too, Christy said, smiling. This was the first time either one has used the L word. Later that night they were in their bedroom. Christy, how long will we be gone? Jensen asks as he is packing. We will be there for 3 days, 2 nights. Everyone else will arrive tomorrow night. That will give us some time alone, she said from her closet. Good, we can use some time away from California. But I have to take my laptop because I don't want to get behind in school, he said, standing in his closet door. That's fine, as long as I have your nights, she said, smiling. You will always have my nights. How is the weather this time of the year in Bora Bora? He asks as he looking around in his closet. It's usually around 86 to 88 in January and February. She is looking at an orange bikini. After they had finally finished packing, Cliff and Jensen take the luggage to the SUV. I will see you two soon, Cliff said. Oh, you are not going with us? Jensen asks, looking at him. No, I will come with the crew. You two need some time alone, Cliff said, smiling at Chris. Chris wanted to spend some time with just Jensen. Once they were on the plane, she told the staff not to disturb them. Jensen raised his eyebrow. Once the staff is gone, she drops her dress to the floor. What are you doing? He whispers, yells, looking at her. She takes her bra off, throwing it on the floor. Christy. He is smiling. She steps out of her panties, picks them up, throws them to him. Jensen catches and sniffs her panties, smiling. She gets on her knees, unzips his pants. He pulls his shirt off, raised his body so she can pull his pants and boxers off. Christy slides his dick in her mouth. He moans, pulling her hair up in his hands, watching her bobbing her head up and down. He moans. He releases his seed in her mouth. She swallows it. Jensen pulls her up from the floor. Christy straddles him. He pushed his dick into her, harder, baby. He moans as she moves her body. That's it, Christy. Oh God, Jay. Come with me, baby, I'm cumin Jay. They come together. She lays her head on his shoulder. You are going to be a handful, he said, smiling. They both laughs. Once they are dressed, she tells the staff to bring them a bottle of mineral water and a Bud Light. Christy, where will we be staying? He asks as he is looking at his tablet. Sofitel Bora Bora, Marara Beach, on a private island. The crew will be staying in the resort. We have a bungalow that is over the water, she said, looking at her tablet, reading her email. I want to go for a swim once we get settled, he said, looking at the pictures of the island. Okay, she said, smiling at him. Once they arrived and are alone, Jay change into a pair of estate blue Cabo swim trunks. Christy is wearing a black and white animal print side-tie bikini bottom. Jay takes her hand, leading her to the deck on their bungalow. He steps in the water first, taking her in his arms, standing her in the water. It's beautiful here. She is looking around. He wraps his arms around. I have always wanted to come here, Jay said, kissing her neck. Take her hand as they walk further into the water to swim. Later on, when they are under their bungalow, Christy wraps her arms around him. He lifts her into his arms. She wraps her legs around his waist. Jay unties her bikini bottom on one side. Christy reaches in his swim trunks, taking his cock out, inserting it into her core. As she moves her body, he grips her tighter. Both moan until they come. Are you okay? She asks him. He is staring at the water. I'm a fish out of water, he said, looking at her. You are going to do great. Be yourself. I'll be right here with you, she said, smiling. I'm still taking in that you created and name a cologne because of me. He is smiling, looking at her. She smiles. Photo shoot. The crew and Cliff arrived early the next morning. Christy watched as Jensen did different poses. He's a natural. He is looking so handsome and sexy. Nelson is happy with the way things are going, she is thinking. During a short break, Jensen is sitting in a chair. The hairstylist has finished touching up his hair. She is walking over to him when a young lady approaches him. Jensen is pushing her hand off him. She heard him say, "No." The lady is talking low. Christy couldn't hear her. "Hi," Christy said. "Hey you," he said, smiling at her. "What's going on here?" Christy asks, looking at the lady. "I was asking Jensen if I could show him around," the young lady said, smiling at him. "Oh really? What did he say?" Christy asks her, smiling. "That he wasn't interested, but I am sure that I can convince him. He said that he has a girlfriend. But what she doesn't know won't hurt her. Right?" she said, still smiling at him. Chris motions for Nelson to come over. Nelson walks over, looking at her, Jensen, and the young lady. Pay her for the time she has worked. Her services are no longer needed, Chris said, smiling. Okay, Nelson said, looking at the lady. Chris is looking at the lady. The next time you hit on a man and he says no, also that he has a girlfriend, listen to him. Also make sure that it's not your boss's boyfriend. Are you okay? Jensen asks, rubbing her stomach. I'm good. How do you feel about the way you're going? She asked him, rubbing his back. I will be glad when it's over, so I can have you to myself, Jensen said, kissing her. Chris, I sent her back to her room, Nelson said. She nods. How much longer? Jensen asks, looking at Nelson. About an hour maybe, Nelson said, smiling. He is doing a good job, Cliff said, looking at Jensen. I knew he would, Christy said, smiling, looking at Jay. Do you two need me tonight? Cliff asks, walking beside her. No, but you are riding back with us, she said, looking at Cliff. He is looking at one of the women on the crew. Okay, Cliff said, nodding his head. Go, Chris said, looking at Cliff, smiling. Talk to you two later, Cliff said as he walks toward the lady. After about an hour or so, the photo shoot is finally over. I am glad this is over, Jace said as he walks up to her. You are a natural, she said, smiling at him. I never thought I would ever have done that, Jace said, kissing her. What do you want to do tonight? She asks. Nothing at all. Just lay on the deck. Relax, enjoy our last night here. He is wrapping his arms around her. Robbie and David. 6 days later, Robbie and David are sitting in the den watching television and eating dinner. They see Jensen and Christina on the TV being stopped by CG and a few other photographers. One of the reporters is yelling Jensen's name. How does it feel to have a cologne line created for you and named after you by your girlfriend? One of the reporters yells. Jensen has Christy hand leading her into a restaurant. Cliff and 2 of the bodyguards are blocking the photographs from them. Jensen, Christina, the guy yells again. Jensen stops. He smiles at Christy. She nods her head, smiling at him. When we come out, we will be more than happy to take pictures and talk. But let me feed my girlfriend first, Jensen said, smiling at Christy. Christy smiles back. Sure man, we'll be here, the guy said, smiling. Zach the reporter shows a clip of that night. He is talking about Jensen and Christina. These 2 love is real. You can see it in their eyes. Christina has always been a private, sweet, beautiful young lady. She was just waiting on her Prince Charming. That happens to be Jensen. He is handsome, talented, and smart. These 2 make a beautiful couple. When they finished their dinner, they came out, laughed and talked to all of us, took pictures. They held hands and smiled at each other the whole time. It's nothing fake about them. Christina created a cologne line about him. Because she loves the way he smells. So she recreated his scent. The line is named Jensen Mi Amor. Mi Amor means my love in Spanish. The ads will start airing tomorrow. Jensen is the model for the ads. The cologne will be in shelves tomorrow also. I definitely will be buying it. End of the interview. My son is famous. He has a line of cologne named after him. He will be in the ads for it, Robbie said, smiling, looking at the TV. Yes, he is, David said, gritting his teeth. His girlfriend is beautiful, Robbie said, looking at David, smiling. Yes, she is. She looks familiar, David said, looking at Robbie. You probably saw her on TV before, Robbie said. Our son is living a wonderful life, David said, looking at Robbie, fake smiling. Robbie looks at David. He has never referred to Jensen, his son, before. She is wondering, what the hell is he up to?